The static doesn't just block the signal, it eats the truth until all that's left is the hum of a hungry ghost. "I'm not taking you to the dark, Gabriel," the shadow whispers, his voice sounding like dry leaves caught in a turbine. "I'm taking you to the only place where the signal never fades." Gabriel stares into the vacuum tubes of his father's eyes and sees a man who was once a father but is now just a broadcast of grief. The air in the sewer is thick with the metallic tang of old copper and the stagnant breath of a city that has forgotten its depths. Gabriel stands frozen, his heart a frantic bird trapped in a cage of ribs, as the figure before him pulses with a sickening gray light. This is not the man who tucked him in, but a fragment of a person caught in a permanent glitch. The father flickers, his silhouette blurring into the jagged lines of a malfunctioning screen, manifesting the pain of a man who was used and discarded by the station above. He was once a technician, a humble servant of the airwaves, until the tower began to take more than it gave. Someone higher up, someone with a thirst for power, turned the transmitter into a vacuum that sucked the life out of the workers. Now, the father exists only as a desperate frequency, a lonely transmission seeking a receiver. He reaches out, his fingers trailing threads of white noise through the damp air. He does not want to hurt Gabriel. He wants to save him from the crushing volume of a world that stopped listening to them both. The horror isn't in the flickering skin or the hollow eyes, but in the terrifying, distorted love of a man who believes the void is a sanctuary. Gabriel feels the cold pressure of the static against his skin, a numbing sensation that threatens to turn his own blood into ice and data. The walls of the sewer begin to vibrate, resonating with the low-frequency thrum of the pirate tower perched far above the falls. It is a rhythmic, oppressive sound, like the heartbeat of a machine that has developed a taste for souls. The father steps closer, his boots making no sound on the wet concrete, for he is no longer heavy enough to affect the physical world. He speaks, and the sound comes not from his mouth, but from the very air around Gabriel's ears. He tells a story of the night the tower changed, of the secret signal that rewrote his DNA into something digital and drifting. He describes the agony of being a man who can hear every conversation in the city, but can participate in none. The betrayal burns in his translucent chest like a dying filament. He was a gear in a machine that decided to grind him into dust, and now he hates the light of the sun because it reveals how little of him is left. He offers Gabriel a hand that is more shadow than flesh, promising a kingdom of quiet where no one can ever leave them again. The water at their feet begins to swirl, pulled by a phantom tide toward the deep, lightless pipes where the signal is strongest. Gabriel sees his father's face warp with a sudden, sharp grief, the expression of a man realizing he is the monster in his own son's story. The darkness in the tunnel is not empty. It is crowded with the echoes of 1,000 stolen voices, all whispering the same forgotten names. Gabriel feels the weight of his father's loneliness pressing against his lungs, making every breath a struggle against the static. The man with the vacuum tube eyes gestures toward the deep pipes, where the water vanishes into a black maw. He explains that the world above is a lie, a cacophony of meaningless noise designed to drown out the individual. Down here, he claims, they can be the masters of the frequency, existing in the spaces between the words. Gabriel looks at the vintage microphone his father holds and realizes it is the anchor, the point where the man ends and the machine begins. It is the very tool that was used to strip his father of his humanity, now held like a sacred relic. The emotional gravity of the situation pulls at Gabriel's resolve. The sight of his father's weeping, flickering face breaking his heart, even as fear freezes his limbs. He remembers the warmth of a hand on his shoulder, a memory that now feels like a cruel joke in the face of this electric ghost. The father's form starts to stretch, becoming a long ribbon of interference that begins to wrap around Gabriel's waist. It is a cold, tingling embrace, the sensation of being slowly deleted from reality. As the static coil tightens, Gabriel's gaze falls upon the radio on his own belt, the small device that has been his only companion in the dark. He realizes that his father isn't pulling him. He is being broadcasted into him. To escape, he must disrupt the connection that has turned his father into a living signal. He thinks of the man his father used to be, the one who worked the night shifts at the station before the shadows took him. That man would never want his son to become a ghost in a pipe. Gabriel reaches out, not to push his father away, but to touch the vintage microphone, the source of the transmission. As his fingers brush the cold metal, a surge of feedback erupts, a piercing shriek that echoes off the curved walls like a physical blow. The father recoils, his form shattering into 1,000 jagged pixels before stitching itself back together in a spasm of light. For a moment, the vacuum tubes in his eyes flicker out, and the real eyes of a tired, broken man look back at Gabriel. In that brief window of clarity, the father sees the terror he is inflicting. He sees the son he loved being consumed by the very darkness he tried to call a home. The realization is more painful than the electricity, a silent scream of regret that ripples through the sewer water. The feedback loop intensifies as Gabriel grips the microphone, his own body becoming a conductor for the redirected energy. He doesn't fight with hate. He fights with the overwhelming weight of the life his father is trying to throw away. He pours every memory of the sun, every sound of the wind in the trees, and every mundane noise of the living world into the device. The father begins to dissolve, not into the darkness, but into the static itself, his form becoming less and like a man, and more like a fading pulse. He realizes he cannot exist in the same space as Gabriel's vibrant, loud reality. The bridge between them is burning, the wires of the soul melting under the heat of the conflict. The father's hand, once translucent, now begins to transparentize completely, becoming a mere shimmer in the air. He looks at the deep pipes one last time, then back at his son, and a final, clear message transmits through the air without the need for a speaker. It is a plea for forgiveness, a silent admission that the silence was never a sanctuary, only a grave. The grip on Gabriel's waist loosens, the cold tingling replaced by a sudden, rushing warmth as the father's energy begins to dissipate. The pirate tower above groans, its power diverted, and its purpose lost in the sudden surge of emotional static. With a final, blinding flash of white light, the vintage microphone shatters in Gabriel's hand, the shards falling into the dark water like diamonds. The figure of his father doesn't fall or run. He simply ceases to be. One moment he is there, a flickering monument to a stolen life, and the next, there is only the empty air and the smell of ozone. The silence that follows is profound, but it is no longer the silence of a grave. It is the silence of a room after a loud television has been turned off. Gabriel stands alone in the knee-deep water, his breath hitching in his chest as the reality of the loss crashes over him. His father is gone, not to the deep pipes and not to the tower, but simply gone from the frequency of the world. The ghost was a product of the machine, and with the connection broken, the machine has nothing left to hold on to. Gabriel looks at his hands, which are shaking but solid, firmly rooted in the world of the living. He realizes his father chose to vanish rather than drag him into the freeze. It was the last act of a man who remembered, at the very end, how to be a father instead of a ghost. The sewer feels larger now, an empty tunnel beneath a city that is finally beginning to wake up. Gabriel climbs the rusted ladder leading out of the darkness, his muscles aching with a fatigue that goes deeper than the bone. He emerges into the cool night air near the edge of the falls, where the roar of the water drowns out the lingering hum in his ears. High above, the pirate radio tower stands dark and silent, its red warning light extinguished for the first time in years. The stolen souls have been grounded, the transmission ended by a son's refusal to be a replacement. He walks away from the edge, his boots crunching on the gravel, a solid sound in a solid world. He reaches for the radio on his belt and unclips it, looking at the dead screen and the melted casing. He tosses it into the tall grass, leaving the last piece of the nightmare behind. The world is loud, the distant sound of traffic, the rustle of leaves, the steady beat of his own heart. And for the first time, he finds the noise beautiful. He knows he will carry the static in his dreams, a faint reminder of the man who was lost to the wires. But as the first hint of dawn touches the horizon, he knows he is no longer a part of the broadcast. He is the one who stayed behind to tell the story of the silence. The end of the world didn't come with a bang or a whisper. It ended when the last light of the transistor faded into the morning.